Hello, and welcome to the CashBased Practice Podcast, a production of drjarodcarter.com, aimed at giving physical therapists and other healthcare practice owners the information needed for success in the private pay business model. And now, here's your host, Jarod Carter.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining me. This is a highlights episode of the podcast where we've gone through to extract the stories, the strategies, and the topics that we feel give you the best chance for success in the out-of-network private pay business model. As always, I want to thank my sponsors of the podcast, Patient Sites, not just for being loyal sponsors all these years, but for what they've done for my own private practice. I really appreciate it, guys. Check them out at patientsites.com. If you are interested in this practice model, which obviously you are, there's some must-know information in a free 2-hour in-depth training that I've hosted at drjarodcarter.com/the8keys. You can go to that webpage and pick a time that works for you to take in all that information and apply it to your current or future practice. And of course, if you have appreciated anything about this podcast, gotten anything from it, even just inspiration, please hop over to iTunes and leave an honest review, and I would deeply appreciate it. So with all that said, thank you again so much always for joining me, and here is this week's episode highlight. You know, I just realized we hadn't even really discussed the whole insurance versus cash pay ratio in your clinic. Are you guys, I believe you're 100% cash based, correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So did you guys start that way, or did you start taking any insurances?
Yes. So in 2010, when some of the major insurance companies, in California cut their reimbursement, we were working at this previous practice and basically had to make the decision whether to cut the time we were spending with our patient down or to add on aides or PTAs. And we decided to then go to a cash-based system. So Meredith and I both had, years, 4 years under our belt of being a cash-based practice before we opened up our own practice. Okay. And I'm sure Meredith probably has something to expand on that, but yeah.
Yeah, at that time, I think it was Anthem that made huge cuts across the board. And our practice setting really was, the space itself wasn't really, wouldn't necessarily allow for us to see multiple patients at a time. We had sort of smaller private treatment rooms that we were treating in.
Yeah.
So at that time, it really became, what do we do? Because that was our main source for patients at that time. And right around that time, I actually was reading a book called Everything is Marketing. And it's a book by Fred Joyal, who's the CEO and founder of 1-800-DENTIST. Mm-hmm. And actually that book is about something that the dental industry had gone through long before PT, which was declining in reimbursement. And it talked a lot about the segmentation of the dental industry and the volume-based, insurance-based model, and then the development of the concierge, private practice, more cash-based practices that were beginning to come about, and how those practices were thriving. And it really became a how-to book on how to build a high customer service, high quality concierge kind of business. And it was specific to the dental industry, but I happened to be reading it at that time. So I talked to the owner of the practice and about this possibility of going cash, and I gave her the book, and ultimately she did make that call, and we all decided that we could weather the storm with her, because obviously going from insurance-based model to cash right away meant that we were going to see huge drops in how our patients came in the door. So that was a big deal.
That's awesome. Thanks for mentioning that book. I'll link to that in the show notes, and I'll be purchasing that today. But so how did that go when you guys were insured by multiple or in network with multiple payers, and you went cold turkey, dropped all of them at once, and then had to kind of figure it out?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. How did it go? Tell us the story.
Definitely a decline in patient numbers. There was one person that was working at our practice who ended up leaving because the numbers dropped, so yeah, that didn't work out so
It was,
well.
yeah, it was hard because our numbers went from, essentially we could see as many patients as we wanted to in a day. We could have full patient loads to,
Yeah.
well, we had 3 or 4 PTs that, whose mouths we were trying to, the owner was trying to feed, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And as Brooke referred to, what was coming through the door just wasn't enough for one of these PTs. And so she had to leave and seek out something else. And that I really call it weathering the storm because those numbers did really drop down. And as all of us in individual families had to decide, could we take that, because we were not, we were hourly employees. So if we weren't seeing patients, we weren't being paid.
And so we had both been there for, a number of years. And so because we'd spent one-on-one an hour with patients, we started, we had really good rapport with those patients and with family, and, had good referral base through doctors and family and friends. And we're fortunate to work on the west side of Los Angeles. And so, some people were willing to make that transition with us.
Cool.
And were willing to pay for their services to get exactly what they had, a month prior. Okay. And so we hung on to that. And then we, went back to the doctors and back to the other referral sources. And because a lot of the other clinics in our area were then changing their models and going down to less time with their patients, more time with aides and assistants. And, they basically were changing the way that they practiced. And so we went back out and said, hey, this is what we're doing. We're keeping our hour one-on-one with the PT. This is how we're going to be, working it from now on. And if you have patients that are the right, fit for us, then you should send them our way, because our quality of care we feel far supersedes, spending 15 minutes or so with a PT. So it took, I would say, a year or two to kind of get back to those previous numbers and to be a little more comfortable with what was going on. But that's sort of what happened.
That's
good. And I think and Brooke really brings up important points that because those patients weren't coming through insurance, we had to really start on what is this different business model? How do we bring patients in the door? And how do we talk to our patients about what the difference is if in a cash-based or out of network, and our quality of care? How do we sell that and reach out to the marketplace, because we weren't going to be getting any people coming through insurance. So we had to really shift gears in terms of how do we bring people in.
What did you find works with in terms of bringing those people in? In that transition, it sounds like you all had to kind of treat your own caseload as like your own little private practice within the practice already. And, if you weren't seeing the patients, you weren't getting paid. So what things did y'all try and find that did work in that transition? And, maybe those out there looking at doing the transition, can get something out of your experience.
I think that the referrals through family and friends of those patients that we would help get better, who really believed in the work that we did, was very helpful. I also think that people who pay for one-on-one private training, they pay for private yoga sessions, they pay for private Pilates sessions. I think we actually worked closely with a Pilates studio, and they ended up being a very good referral source for us.
Great.
And I would say there were a handful of doctors who were very supportive of what we were doing. And so that was really helpful too. Some of the doctors kind of dropped off because it was important that their patients got care in network, and we lost those doctors. And some doctors went the opposite way and felt that what we were doing was really important, and they would rather have their patients see us than send them into a pool of in-network providers within their insurance companies.
Were there any commonalities among those doctors that really embraced it? Like, certain types of doctor, physician practices, or anything that someone else out there looking to transition might target if they are going to do any marketing to physicians or try to maintain, the relationships that they can as they transition out of network? In any common threads between the ones that really embraced what you guys were doing?
Well, first of all, if you have any relationships with physicians, those are really important to keep up, because that physician knows the quality of care that you give, and that relationship does matter, and that can certainly be a link as you go out of network. That physician can still refer. Brooke said we had some that fell off for sure. I do think though that over the years, we're not seeing that same amount of sensitivity from all physicians out there. I feel like it's changing. We also have physicians that are out of network themselves. So those physicians can certainly appreciate the business model, and they're certainly, we have a couple of physicians like that refer to us.
And then even, one or two physicians I can think of that have also been our patients. So they see that, they see and feel and know what we actually do and the kind of care that we give. So that doesn't, of course, happen with all physicians, but that I think has also been helpful when they get injured. And they've come to see us and seek, physical therapy treatment from us.
Okay, great. That's great advice. People out there looking to transition, those that you have that personal connection with, maybe even have been patients of yours. And then, of course, those who are also out of network or concierge or something like that. And I found the same thing in my practice. Those are the types that send patients, and I really haven't marketed to others. And it sounds like most of the others kind of fell off, in terms of being big time referral sources for you guys. So that's, this is great information. So, you went through that transition when you started your practice as partners. Sounds like you kind of already had a bit of a caseload of cash-based patients that were probably helpful in following you as you started the new practice. Can you tell us a bit about the demographics and patient types? It sounds like, pretty high level activity, or high, those who are really into their activities. But give us kind of an idea of the type of patients that you see on a daily basis.
We see a pretty big spectrum of patients. As young as we see youth athletes here. We see some pediatric patients. So we've had as young as 4 years old here. And we also have, which is something we'll talk about, but we also have patients who may be Medicare in maintenance. So we have a little bit of the older population here as well, and everything in between. We see chronic overuse injuries. We see sports injuries. We see weekend warrior injuries. We see the injuries from office work and sitting all day. The spectrum's really broad. I think that what Brooke and I like to say, there's not much that we don't see and do here. And then occasionally we'll say something like, well, we don't do a lot of TMJ. And then the next thing you know, we've got 5 TMJ patients on the so it's pretty broad.
And so in terms of, because this is something that, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm always asked, or I think there's a common misconception out there that if you have a cash-based clinic and it's busy, it's just because you're in a rich area or that most of your patients have a ton of money. Would you say that, you have a higher level of fluency in your patient population, or would you say kind of different than that? How would you describe that side of things?
I would say, yes, we have a high level of fluency, but we also, people seek us out because we get them better. And so I think everyone will put their money towards things that they want to, or that they want to buy, or that any kind of medical treatment, or that they think is going to, make them feel better or get better. So some patients, we basically accommodate and work with our patients. Some patients, if 30 minutes of cash pay is what they can afford, that's what we do. And
okay.
Some patients come in and they really they want to get a good home program going on. We'll see them for a couple sessions, and we're really, part of our practice is that we are available all the time via email, phone, text, and all of that. So we're very thorough with our patients. So it's not to say that every single patient that walks in the door has the money to afford our practice. I think some, in a sense, maybe do not, but they know that they will get better faster. And so they spend that money on getting good physical therapy.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
I would say too, we have a lot of patients that show up here and end up referred to us or finding us, who were being treated in practices that were high volume insurance-based practices. I have a number of these people on my calendar right now, and they seek us out, find us, and get referred to us, and they make that choice because, unfortunately, the model that they were working in, they didn't feel like they were getting the care that they needed. They didn't feel that they were getting better. And, but the pressure's really on for us here. We do work really hard. We study, we do a lot of Con Ed. We have to be really at top of our game to get these folks what they need and what they're paying for, which is really high quality care and high customer service. And we take it very, very seriously, and they feel it. And as Brooke was saying, they may not have, a money tree in the backyard. They find other ways, perhaps other things to do without, so that they can have high quality physical therapy.
Awesome. That feel like, something I'm repeating over and over again. And it's so great to hear it from practice owners like yourself all over the country. The same thing. If you're providing a super high value product, then it's not just that, only people with a bunch of money are gonna be in there. That, you just get a full spectrum, and it's really about the mindset that they have about healthcare, about how they move, how they feel, and willing to pay more for a better service. So that's awesome. You guys are doing fantastic job there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the CashBased Practice Podcast. If you liked what you heard here today, we have some extremely important things we want to send you. First, a quick start guide to cash-based physical therapy and Medicare. This free ebook will provide the primary rules and regulations surrounding this confusing but important topic. Secondly, we want to share with you the 5 characteristics common to all successful cash-based practices. Find out the vital things Jarod has learned from years of interviewing cash practice owners and running his own successful cash practice. As one of our listeners, we want to give you all this information absolutely free. You can get it right now by going to drjarodcarter.com/success. Again, that's drjarodcarter.com/success. Go there now to get your copies, and we'll see you next time.